Another victory for the Hillsborough families as a police chief is suspended. The Chief Constable of South Yorkshire apologised yesterday, but sorry was not enough in the face of growing anger over the failings of his force.
My decision is based on the erosion of public trust and confidence referenced in statements and comments in the House of Commons.
As Liverpool comes together tonight to remember the dead, there are calls for radical change in the light of the inquest conclusions.
I don't blame the ordinary police officers, the men and women who did their very best on that day, but I do blame their leadership and culture, which seems rotten to the core.
I'm live in Liverpool as the city marks a crucial milestone in the long battle for justice.
Also on the programme, junior doctors walk out for a second day of strikes, but are there signs of conciliation tonight? Britain's cycling chief quits amid claims of sexism and discrimination. And Trump on the offensive as he accuses Hillary of playing the women's card.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin in Liverpool and Mary Nightingale in the studio.
Good evening from Liverpool, where behind me the city is right now paying tribute to the 96 people who were killed at Hillsborough. It comes as the families of those who died won another milestone victory today in their campaign for justice. South Yorkshire's Chief Constable David Crompton has been suspended in the wake of yesterday's inquest findings. Earlier, Labour's Andy Burnham demanded no holding back in pursuing prosecutions. These are the scenes now in St George's Place behind me, where the names of the Hillsborough dead will soon be read out and where they are now singing "Abide with Me." But first tonight, Emma Murphy reports on the latest development in the family's long search for justice.
They toll for justice and a new era. 96 bells to mark 96 lives. Their quiet reflection was the order of the day. The demand was for accountability. And it began at 4 p.m.
Following the results of the verdicts yesterday, the continuing criticism that has been directed at the Chief Constable and the eroding trust and confidence in South Yorkshire Police, I've been left with no choice other than to suspend David from his duties as Chief Constable of South Yorkshire Police.
This was David Crompton yesterday, delivering his response to the Hillsborough findings.
We will now take time to carefully reflect on the implications of the verdicts.
His time for reflection in office was short, to the delight of the Hillsborough families.
These people have conducted themselves in a dreadful way, and I have no sympathy for Mr Crompton in any way, shape or form.
In the Commons, the Home Secretary laid out the possible charges being investigated by the two ongoing criminal inquiries.
Gross negligence manslaughter, misconduct in public office, perverting the course of justice and perjury, as well as offences under the Safety of Sports Grounds Act 1975 and the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974.
Andy Burnham.
From the MP who did so much to bring about the new inquests and had demanded the departure of David Crompton, a brutal assessment.
Let me be clear, I don't blame the ordinary police officers, the men and women who did their very best on that day and who today are out there keeping our streets safe. But I do blame their leadership and culture, which seems rotten to the core.
There has been no comment today from some of those under investigation, like Superintendent David Duckenfield.
When this mob...
Or those once so willing to offer views, like Paul Middup of the Police Federation.
I'm not making
any statement whatsoever about Hillsborough.
Do you regret describing those who died as a marauding mob? What happened in this stadium is now clearer than ever, but it will take more time for full accountability to be established.
And Emma is in Sheffield now. Emma, action already then over those inquest findings. Can we expect more, do you think, in the days and weeks to come?
Well, Andy Burnham was certainly trying to push the Home Secretary to bring any pressure she could to bear to make this process go quickly. But be under no illusion, there is a lot of work going on. These two major criminal investigations, I've been speaking to senior officers in them over the last few days, and they are aware of the need to do this in a timely fashion, but they are also aware of the responsibility that falls to them, the very serious matters that are being investigated, and they are sticking with their view that they will have their cases complete by the turn of the year. And at that point, the Crown Prosecution Service will need to deal with the situation for themselves. Of course, this situation is difficult because of the ages of those involved, some of whom have died, 68 of whom are no longer deemed to be fit to take part in interview.
All right, Emma, thank you very much indeed. Well, even though there's a determination to continue the fight for justice, many of the Hillsborough families are still coming to terms with the victory they won at the inquest after 27 long years of anguish. Our correspondent Damon Green has spent the day with Anne Burkitt, whose beloved stepson Peter was one of those killed in the crush at Hillsborough.
These are the memories of a struggle that's lasted 27 years. A struggle which is now finally over. And so the boxes and boxes of legal documents, letters and pictures, notebooks and press cuttings are now being consigned to the past. Anne has no use for them anymore. The fight is won. It's over.
It's over, yeah. Can you believe it? It's hard. It's hard to think that that's it. You know, never thought this had happened for us.
Her family will never forget Peter, but the struggle to find the truth about his death, to clear his name, have cast a long shadow over their lives. His father Terry died 11 years ago. The fight for justice had been his life.
A lot of these are like solicitors' letters from over the years.
So many of Anne's memories are of Hillsborough, so much of her life, her husband's life, in these files and folders. She only wanted one thing, for her children and grandchildren not to inherit this burden.
My kids have lived through it. They know it half by heart. But also the grandkids. They're living with it. They see you with the heartache and they don't want it, and why should they have it?
The boxes will go into the attic. Maybe one day her granddaughter will want to know about that struggle. But for today, Anne and Lily were content to join with the rest of Merseyside and be grateful for the peace of this day. Damon Green, ITV News in Liverpool.
Well, I should just tell you, very moving moments here behind me as they read out the names of all 96 of those who died back in 1989. Let's just have a listen.
Thomas Howard, Thomas Anthony Howard, Eric George Hughes, Alan Johnston, Christine Ann Jones, Gary Philip Jones, Richard Jones, Nicholas Peter Jones, Andrew Peter Kelly, Michael David Kelly.
And Martin Geisler is with me now. Martin, part reflection on yesterday's victory and, of course, as we see now, part memorial. Very powerful scenes.
They are, Mark, and they're a reminder of what this is all about. I mean, this began in the 1980s when a few dozen families took on the might of the British state, and finally they've won. What strength they needed for that fight, and they drew that strength from the knowledge that from the very beginning this whole city stood shoulder to shoulder behind them. They've always known that. Tonight they can see it for themselves here on these streets. There are a lot of emotions here this evening. This is a story, of course, about grief and pain and death, but there's anger here too, because it's also a story about how the authorities lied and schemed and stitched things up to try and make it look like in some way these people were responsible for their own deaths. What the campaigners have delivered to their loved ones is the dignity and the respect that they should have had from the very start. It's a formidable example of how, if they've got enough strength and determination, people really do have power And the people of Liverpool are understandably extremely proud of these campaigners tonight.
All right, Martin, thank you very much. And on the names go. That's it from me from Liverpool for now. The vigil coverage continues online, by the way, at itv.com/news. I'll be back later, but first here's Mary with the rest of the day's news.
Thank you, Mark. Junior doctors in hospitals across England are going back to work tonight at the end of their second day of all-out strike. But this evening there was the first sign in weeks of a possible move towards conciliation. The striking doctors' union representative told ITV News he would resign if he thought that would actually make a difference. Our health editor Rachel Younger has the story.
We are imposing a new contract.
It's absolutely wretched. I have cried on my way to the picket line.
I think it's quite wrong for there to be a withdrawal of emergency care.
6 months of arguments, 5 different strikes, 2 sides refusing to budge. Even after the first full walkout in NHS history.
You've withdrawn emergency care, and yet the government hasn't budged an inch. You've lost, haven't you?
It's very clear that no doctor in this country is going to simply decide that they're going to accept an imposed contract. We've seen that over the last 2 days. And the fact is that we've been very clear that there is no option off the table right now. And what we need to think about is what we do to protect our members.
If this is about solutions, if you are being pragmatic about this, is it time for you to stand down?
There are 54,000 doctors out there, and I have to say, if it was a question, if it was me that was the problem, I would not think in a heartbeat I would put myself out of that situation, because genuinely what I want to see is a solution to this problem.
Do you think it would help?
If I've made a mistake, then I'm happy to admit it.
Jeremy Hunt is telling us this is going to be his last big job in politics. Is this taking a similar toll on you?
Well, I mean, I'm not in politics. As soon as I finish this job, I'll probably go back to delivering babies in North London. Genuinely, I know that this may sound weird, but I don't have any animosity towards the Secretary of State. I hope that actually his last big job in politics will be left with a sense of conciliation, that he will get back round the table and he will leave a legacy that actually at the end of the most damaging dispute in the NHS, that he did try and find a way out of it through talking to us.
An olive branch, a Department of Health spokesman said this isn't about personality. We should remember that 90% of this contract was agreed with the BMA. The issue is the ability of the wider Junior Doctors Committee, given their hardline stance, to negotiate with the government. But as the clock turned 5, ending 2 unprecedented but relatively quiet days in our hospitals, that hour of reckoning felt as elusive as ever. Rachel Younger, ITV News.
Britain's preparations for the Rio Olympics were thrown into disarray tonight by the resignation of a key backroom figure. British cycling's technical director, Shane Sutton, was embroiled in a row over alleged discriminatory remarks. Cycling is one of Britain's big medal hopes, as Richard Pallow now reports.
100 days to Rio, a milestone marked by the release of the Team GB kit and also now by one of our main medal-winning sports being plunged into chaos. Australian Shane Sutton, the central cog in the British cycling machine and instrumental in so many successes, has resigned. It follows alleged derogatory comments about the physical abilities of the para-cyclists he was nurturing. Mark Colborne won gold in the 2012 Paralympics when he worked under Sutton.
Goal for Great Britain!
I am disgusted, as a disabled person myself, and certainly one that was part of the, the Paralympic team, for London 2012. However, as I said, the investigation needs to, get to the bottom of it, and hopefully, none of the athletes going into Rio will actually be affected.
In a statement, Sutton said, "The developments over the past few days have clearly become a distraction. It is for this reason, and having spoken to friends and family, that I believe it is in the best interests of British cycling for me to step down from my position as technical director. I have made clear that I reject the specific claims that have been made against me in recent days."
Within any context, derogatory language is unacceptable. Clearly everyone would agree with that. And we do hope that the performances of our athletes in London started the journey of showing people, their world-class standard and what it takes to win. And, Rio is part of that journey.
Sutton is also said to have told European gold medalist Jess Varnish to go and have a baby when she got cut from the Olympic training squad. He denies that too. But there's no doubt replicating the cycling triumphs of London in both the Olympics and Paralympics just got an awful lot harder. Richard Pallo, ITV News.
Calls are growing tonight for an investigation into the conduct of Sir Philip Green, the former owner of the failed department store chain BHS. A pensions expert has told ITV News Sir Philip may have to pay several £100 million to bail out the company's pension scheme. Our business editor Joel Hills reports.
Sir Philip Green's talent as a retailer won him his knighthood and fabulous wealth. The billionaire is close to politicians, supermodels and celebrities. But the mess at BHS is damaging his reputation. Not one, but two committees of MPs now want answers.
But did Philip Green sell it when the bus was hurtling off the cliff and he jumped out just in time? When you're talking about pensions worth hundreds of millions of pounds and you're talking about 11,000 jobs on the high street, how would that be allowed to happen?
Sir Philip Green hasn't said he will appear. You cannot force him to, can you?
So it's important that in terms of salvaging a reputation, he comes before Parliament and answers questions from MPs.
Sir Philip Green wasn't running BHS when it finally hit the buffers. He'd sold the business a year ago for £1 to a company called Retail Acquisitions Limited. The first thing the administrator did when it took control of BHS on Monday was to dismiss the owners of Retail Acquisitions as directors and launch an investigation into the millions of pounds they have received from BHS. BHS's last full accounts were signed off in March 2015, days before Green sold it. The company had lost £85 million the previous year. The pension deficit stood at £111 million and counting, and BHS's liabilities were £256 million greater than the value of its assets. The business was technically insolvent. It survived as a going concern due to the continued financial support of the ultimate parent, Tavita Investments, owned by Green's family. This pensions expert says Green should have cleared the BHS deal with the pensions regulator. If he didn't, he may end up with a large bill.
The maximum amount that the pension regulator can claim against him is £571 million, and that's the size of the buyout deficit in the BHS pension scheme.
BHS collapsed into administration 2 days ago, and yet Sir Philip has yet to comment publicly. He's instinctively outspoken and his reputation is on the line. He surely won't stay silent for long. Joel Hills, ITV News.
The Labour MP Naz Shah was suspended by her party today amid allegations of anti-Semitic comments.
The Prime Minister
Corbyn had only reprimanded Ms Shah over the comments, which had been made before she became an MP. The Chancellor is blaming latest figures showing Britain's rate of growth had slowed slightly in the first quarter of this year on worries about the EU referendum, but critics say there is no evidence to back that up. And Asda has agreed to change its policy on price promotions after an investigation into supermarket tactics. The competition watchdog asked several chains to review their special offers following claims customers were being misled. Now, Donald Trump has emerged victorious from the latest round of primaries and is now convinced the Republican presidential nomination lies within his grasp. But as our Washington correspondent Robert Moore reports, he was immediately caught up in a row over claims that he made sexist comments about Hillary Clinton.
Mr. Donald J. Trump!
He can now, for the very first time, see the finishing line. After emphatic, even overwhelming victories in 5 states last night, Trump was dismissive of his rivals and also of pleas for him to become more presidential.
Now I'm winning it. It's over. As far as I'm concerned, it's over. These two guys cannot win. There's no path. So why would I change? You know, if you have a football team and you're winning, and then you get to the Super Bowl, you don't change your quarterback, right? So I'm not changing.
As if to confirm that, he then launched an assault on Hillary Clinton, calling her crooked and zeroing in on her gender.
If Hillary Clinton were a man, I don't think she'd get 5% of the vote. The only thing she's got going is the woman's card.
Mrs. Clinton, herself winning in 4 states last night, had this riposte to his insults.
Now, the other day, Mr. Trump accused me of playing the, quote, woman card. Well, if fighting for women's health care and paid family leave and equal pay is playing the woman card, then deal me in.
She was also rehearsing another line that may prove useful between now and November.
Where love trumps hate.
A short time ago, Donald Trump arrived here in Washington to give a speech on foreign policy. It was light on detail.
We must, as a nation, be more unpredictable. We are totally predictable.
Not exactly reassuring to America's allies as he closes in on the Republican nomination. Robert Moore, ITV News, Washington.
And that is all from the studio. And now it's back to Mark in Liverpool.
Mary, thank you very much and welcome back to Liverpool, where, as you can probably see now, the vigil for the victims is still very much underway. So perhaps it's all the more remarkable on a day like today that a national newspaper still finds itself having to apologise for its Hillsborough coverage. The Times admitted making a mistake by not putting the inquest on its first edition front page this morning. But here in Liverpool, one local paper has steadfastly backed the families from the very start. I've been visiting the newsroom of the Liverpool Echo, the paper that always stayed loyal to the family's cause.
Get your splash like go! Get your splash like go!
Every city needs a voice, and for 27 years Liverpool has needed one more than ever. They found it in the Liverpool Echo.
The biggest story, the career-defining story over the last 30 years has undoubtedly been Hillsborough.
Its editor, 23 years a Liverpool man, shows me how his paper has stood up for the families and the city from the start. When, just days after the disaster, the Sun infamously printed its version of the truth, blaming the fans, the Echo responded with this, blaming the police. They've campaigned tirelessly ever since.
We've always had is a team of journalists who believe in the families, believed in the vindication of Liverpool. The establishment felt they could put ordinary people back in their box. Now, what they didn't realise was that the families were not ordinary people. They did not realise Liverpool was not an ordinary city. It's indomitable. You know, no matter what you do to it, it bounces back and says, is that all you've got? Hit me again.
Reporter Susan Lee has followed the family's fight from the tragic day itself.
You wouldn't be human if you didn't feel for them, feel their grief and try and reflect their certainty that a miscarriage of justice had taken place.
A local paper and a local community that chose to fight with the families and not give up.
And that is it from Liverpool, from us tonight, on a day when the city came together to reflect on the victory that was won for the 96 who died at Hillsborough, but also to remember them and to remember too the justice the families insist still needs to be done. From all of us here in Liverpool and in London, bye-bye.
Secondly, the Chief Executive of the Ambulance Service.